All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Andreas Diaz. Sorry about that loud noise there. Uh, Me and Will today to discuss Thor. This year is the 10th anniversary of the first Thor film, of course, directed by Kenneth Branagh. Of course, it's the first appearance of Chris Hemsworth as Thor, the Mighty Thor, Natalie Portman as Jane Foster, and of course, everyone's favorite villain, Loki, played by the wonderful Tom Hiddleston. Will, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Uh, oh, Good. I survived from my 2 shots of vaccine, so I'm
Yeah.
happy.
Well, very. It's very nice to be vaccinated now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I'm very happy about that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and I guess um I guess like starting from the conversation, uh, did you see this film in theaters?
I did. Yeah.
Okay.
I think the only MCU film I didn't see in theaters was The Incredible Hulk.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Every other one, I was there opening weekend.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
My the only my one well, there's two MCU films I haven't seen in theaters are
Mhm.
really the Ant-Man films.
Okay.
Yeah, and the rest I have seen in theaters, either one time or 2 times. So,
Hmm.
so yeah. Wow, interesting. Be interesting when we talk about the Incredible Hulk. I have a soft spot for that film.
Yeah.
So, anyway, so yeah, so I saw this in theaters with my parents, and I I will say it, I think it's one of the most underrated films of the MCU.
Hmm.
It I mean it has that kind of same problem with Iron Man 2, well, because like the sequel, we discussed in Thor: The Dark World, um you know they didn't like the series, the first two Thor films were very much very safe. It never took advantage of its comic book lore.
Hmm.
It um like before Guardians, it didn't took the risk of just going full cosmic.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people overlook this film, despite that,
Hmm.
so uh and I will say I think it was a very good film. I think it delivers on the standalone film. I I, I was very happy it was an origin story for Thor. I like they went into the more ultimate route, but like mixing the 616 version all together.
Hmm.
And I think it's really a great fun film. I think kind of really plays like this sense of like like Superman the movie kind of vibes, where it's like very like it has that just being feel to it as you're supposed to feel, and at the same time you feel everyone is committed to the role, and like everyone just brings their A game in this, and I feel like that's something that you don't see every time in the superhero film, you know, in the theaters. So what do you think?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of like things going on in this movie that I loved and that I was disappointed that they didn't really like continue into the later four movies. But then
Mm-hmm.
there's also a lot of stuff that just doesn't really seem to work. Um, and that seems to be the stuff that they brought into Thor: The Dark World. Um,
Yeah.
but I love, like you were saying, that like Shakespearean feel that Kenneth Branagh brought. Um, like the dialogue in this movie is like I'm not saying it's like good, but I love the direction they went with it. I love how everything's very like verbose and like it's just way more interesting to me than like the normal like quippy Marvel dialogue.
Yeah.
Um, and it
Um,
like sets it apart in a way that like the later movies don't really have. Like I like watching this. reminded me of how like different the franchises felt in Phase One.
Yes.
You know, like this movie is very different from First Avenger, is very different from Iron Man. Um, but by the time you get to like like Thor: The Dark World and um, like
Or
like
like
like yeah,
Avengers Age of
like
Ultron.
they all feel like they're like more cohesive, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But
Yeah.
I don't know. This film feels like it has its own like identity, at least in the like Asgardian parts. I feel like the all the stuff on Earth, that's the stuff that like doesn't really click for me.
Yeah.
And that feels more standard, like Marvel stuff was forced into a more interesting like fantasy movie about Asgard and Thor.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. That's always the kind of letdown for a lot of people for this film is the Earth stuff.
Mhm.
Um. I will counter argument of that I think is necessary in this film. It just I never understood why we did it again in the Thor Dark World film, and
Mhm.
and I because like here it like there's an arc for Thor here, like it
Yes.
and and I feel like Kenneth Branagh and you mentioned the distinct um, voice and identity. This film has that because they're trying to establish Thor in the MCU, and I feel like um, we're like I feel like with Thor: The Dark World, it didn't have like a hook to like hand on with
Mhm.
like it was it struggles to be like a Thor film where here I feel like it is a Thor film and not a Loki show, you know,
Mhm.
which Thor: The Dark World was like it was so dependent on Loki as a
Mhm.
character, and not Thor.
Right.
That's one of the reasons I like and you like and pretty much everyone likes about Thor Ragnarok, because it was again a Thor film. It wasn't like a like this is the reason I don't like the Tim Burton and I respect the Joe Schumacher films, but those four films of the Batman films were so dependent on the villains and like it like that there's something wrong with the product, and I feel like this first film just nailed it in the part of um, doing a character study on a superhero. And
Mhm.
I forgive some of those Earth scenes. And I mean, the Earth scenes have those typical MCU humor that you were talking about, Will, like you see in Phase 2. It's there, but like it wasn't, it's not as like annoying as in Phase 2, I feel like. Because in Thor the Dark World, they use the humor to cover up the thinly plot they have in Thor the Dark World,
Mhm.
and or like the jokes doesn't land like in Age of Ultron or Iron Man 3 or Ant-Man, something like that, because I feel the Winter Soldier and Guardians nail their humor, and especially in those films.
I
But
mean, I think Iron Man 3. Okay, now that I was about to defend it, I can think of instances where the jokes definitely don't land.
yeah,
But there are some good jokes in Iron Man 3.
yeah, I like the jokes in Iron Man 3. I'm just like saying that there's there because I like if you know Shane Black's humor, then you like it,
Yeah, yeah, I love
and
Shane Black. So
yeah, exactly. um, I mean, and we discussed in Iron Man 2. That was another problem. Like, Iron Man 2 has that same problem. Like, I enjoy the film, but the humor is always hit and miss.
mhm.
So this film kind of has that. I mean, I, 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 I think the thing that makes it not as bad as Thor: The Dark World is like everyone is committed. Like Natalie Portman is committed to this role. So, like she's having fun. Dorsey is not as annoying as well. I don't think she's annoying. It's just like why we have her.
Right.
Her
Yeah.
jokes is just ugh. Just meh. Just
Yeah.
you know lackluster.
Yeah. It feels tacked on, which doesn't need to be there.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, yeah. Um, yeah. And I do agree with you about like I mean this is the time they didn't have like that community, like they didn't have like say um, DLP or like the music was, the first phase had really good music, and then phase two they were struggling to keep, consistency, and that's one of my problems with phase two. Um, the Avengers are fine because they did continue with that theme, but where the solo films was weird. They didn't continue with that.
Mhm.
Um, just mainly Iron Man, Thor, and Captain America, where the Guardians their themes continue on in Volume Two, and
Right.
and Phase Three they improve about that. And so, because I really like Patrick Doyle's score of this film, and I was so disappointed they didn't carry over in the second film.
Yeah, I agree.
Um, I guess let's kind of get into like character. Uh, let's kind of get into we think about Chris Hemsworth, and did you know Chris Hemsworth before he got this role?
I think the only like member of the cast that I knew before this movie was Natalie Portman.
Hmm.
I don't think I was familiar with anyone else.
Yeah, yeah. This one was a very interesting casting. Like
Hmm. Well, I
when
guess Anthony Hopkins I knew.
yeah, I was I was gonna say if you didn't know Anthony Hopkins, well,
There's
I would
and Rene Russo too.
yeah. I
Okay.
yeah I forgot Renee Russo was in this. I always like blanked my mind. Was like, oh yeah, she's here because I love her in Little Weapon and the movie Outbreak. With
Mhm.
Dustin Hoffman, and I always forget she's here because she, like she looks like because the whole like Oscar costume is like I don't know what's wrong with me. I just and especially going into the second film, it's like her
Yeah,
role.
she's like pretty central to that one.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it literally, and that was the problem. She was central to Loki, but not with Thor. Like
Right.
it, it's I don't know, it's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Skarsgård, if you do him, he's another like known cast member as well. If you've seen like the original Insomnia and Good Will Hunting, which I know him from,
Hmm.
um, I saw Good afterwards. When the passing of Robert Williams. But he's great as well in this film as Eric Savick, right?
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, this film was very interesting. Brenna and the casting director did a good job of like casting Thor as an unknown,
Hmm.
and it's really weirdly they did it with Loki as well. It's interesting because sometimes you get a well-known actor to play a villain, and then like in the classic Superman way, you know, they cast Superman with an unknown actor, and it's interesting that Marvel did this with Thor, and
Hmm.
and they applied it with Loki, and now,
Yeah. It's
um,
also interesting is that Tom Hiddleston originally auditioned for the role of Thor.
yes,
Yeah,
yep,
which I like. I like that it's like even the actor is kind of living in the shadow of the person playing Thor.
yeah, yeah, and it happened as well with Batman Begins, like Cillian Murphy was addition to Batman,
Oh.
and and just like Tom Hiddleston, you can see footage of
Hmm.
that. And I seen and Cillian looks great in the batsuit. It's just like he doesn't have the chin for Bruce
Mm.
Wayne.
Yeah.
I feel like and like I don't know, like you couldn't believe he could be the Playboy Bruce Wayne.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I saw the footage of like Thomason audition to Thor,
Yeah.
and I mean, he, I mean, I don't know, like he reminds me more of like like a young surfer.
Yeah, he doesn't have the like physicality of Thor.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but I think he's perfectly cast as Loki. So
yes. I guess we kind of get into Loki. I, because I mean, Loki so far has been the most recurring MCU villain, and of course, this is kind of fitting because his show is coming up in June.
mhm.
And what do you think about his performance in this first film um, as Loki?
Yeah, it's a little. different than his performances in later movies.
Mm, yes,
Um,
yes.
but like it's still good. It just doesn't feel quite as like mischievous.
Mm,
Like
yes.
he feels more like like it feels like they're playing up the like um, kid who finds out his whole world is a lie angle
Yeah.
more than him being this like scheming guy in the background.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I I guess like if they play this up like, like our procession about the Norse mythology, and like it's not in the film, but like if they address how like people think of who, like, like the stereotypical, like, myth of these characters, like Loki is wholly different, how
yeah,
you perceive him. And I feel like that's like intentional, because he's going to be more mysterious later on because of what happens to him in this film and entering
right,
into the Avengers.
right.
Because
Like
no, go ahead, go ahead.
yeah, yeah. It's he's more of like a prankster at the beginning of this movie. Like
Yeah.
he invited the Jotuns in just to like mess with Thor's um, ceremony, but
Mm,
like after he learns that he was adopted, um, he starts to like scheme more, and there's like more of a motivation behind all of his trickery. So
yeah.
yeah,
um and also like that, like him discovering like the lie thing about him being a frost giant,
hmm
like that's very classic, like what is it, Otto, not Otto, one of those Greek stories I read in my high school. Uh, what is it? Otto, uh, something like that. Um, I don't know.
um, you talking
Um,
Oedipus, where he like
yes, yes,
okay,
Oedipus. Thank you,
yeah,
thank you. Like that, like a Oedipus story, where like he, like and it's playing up like the like the modern Oedipus and like William Shakespeare, Hamlet kind of way. I feel like that's like kind of Brenna doing that to develop um Loki as a character.
hmm
And one of the things I actually like about this film, compared to the Phase Ones and really Phase Two villains, um, Branagh did a really good job of laying the groundwork of Loki,
hmm
and his relationship with Thor, and like his hatred on, as not hatred, like hatred on his heritage as a frost giant, and like he's
right,
like throughout this phases he's trying to prove himself he is royal to Asgard, and like he is a warrior king, and that's something I feel like that's been consistent of the character of Loki throughout these 10 or 8 years, 10
yeah,
years.
hmm
So, um, and and one of the things that I always get frustrated with the Marvel Studios is they never, like we talked about last week about Red Skull and Captain America in the 80th anniversary talk,
hmm
and one of my problems with the way they handled that is I didn't like, they never build up the Captain America and Red Skull rivalry. Here, the first Thor film did that very well with Loki and Thor,
yeah,
and like I'm kind of surprised how this relationship has continued strongly compared to other villains. I'm like, and it's just the groundwork that Brana did was so good. Like you understand, like one of my problems is, another other problem is that they don't talk about the motivation or like the scheme of the villain. Where here in the first story, like I understand what Loki's doing, and
hmm
like you mentioned how he's trying to, disrupt Thor's, ceremony as a king, but he sees this now another opportunity to, to show, you know, Asgard he's worthy as a king, and like it's this like cat and mouse with Loki, and I feel like it works well in this first Thor film, and then it continues very well in the Avengers, and then and Thor: The Dark World. So What do you think, Will? Picking up all that.
Yeah, no, I think like like you said, they took the time to develop Loki as a character and develop the relationship between Thor and Loki, and that
Yeah,
paid off later. And yeah, like one of Marvel's weaknesses is that they don't normally take the time to do that with their villains. They're like one and done. So
yeah,
uh, yeah, it's definitely good to have that development for Loki early on.
yeah. And I'm interested if because like they know he was going to be in the Avengers because um like I I mean like I don't know, like you heard, like development of the Avengers, like there were supposed to be multiple villains. Like I know, recently I heard that like Stain's son was supposed to be in the Avengers film. Like it was like in early draft, but then
Mm.
I don't know who say just use Loki.
I think it was Joss Whedon.
Okay, okay, it was just okay. Um, and honestly, we're not at the Avengers, but it was cool to find out that the Avengers film was like being like the first issue of the Avengers, and like the
Hmm.
first villain they encountered was Loki, and I
Right.
actually liked that.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So
think that's why Joss Whedon decided to uh, like make Loki the main villain.
mm. And then you mentioned, Will, about the mischief part. I feel like the Avengers is where he becomes more mischief because now that he is like an outlaw and like a threat to Oscar, so
Hmm.
he becomes more dangerous and like more like misfit afterwards. And I feel like here we're seeing this like version of Loki who is, very calm, very, like he's part of the Oscar, but like in reality, he's in his mind, he's not like he's not part of the oldest son family because he has this feeling of like he's not like part of them. And
Right.
then that spirals around like psychologically of Loki desperately trying to prove himself as worthy, and like that continues on throughout the phases when every time he pops up in a film. And
Hmm.
I feel like this film gets that rolling and makes him, and like later we start seeing Loki as the god of misfit. And so, especially in Thor Ragnarok, he that film I feel like he's like the most god of misfit. So
Yeah.
so anything else you want to talk about Loki that I may be missing? Um, I I mean, do you want to talk about the Frost Giant connection? I guess.
Yeah. I guess so. In like actual Norse myth, um, he is a frost giant, and there's no like he's not the adopted son of Odin. He's just a frost giant. He's friends with Odin.
Oh, okay,
Um, yeah. So
okay.
yeah.
I knew the Frost Giant thing that was like true. I didn't know about like that was something I was curious to ask you if he was like the like he was raised by Olin, but no, it was just like
Yeah.
a friend. Okay.
He's just friends with Odin.
Mhm.
Yeah. I don't know why they keep him around because he keeps like tricking them. Well, I guess they find him funny,
Um,
so they keep him around. But
I mean, we don't know if like Olin used him to trick his enemies. I mean, that could be the
yeah,
reason.
no, like there's definitely times where Loki fights for
Hmm.
Asgard in the myths, but ultimately, like when Ragnarok comes around, he's the one leading the frost giants against them.
Oh wow,
So
I'm shocked that they didn't do that in the MCU. I That could have been great. Um, I guess uh, we do need to talk about Jane Foster,
Mhm.
and and she's another one that like I I don't like. It's not her fault. It's just like the second film didn't give her much. I feel
Mhm.
like Jane Foster was fine in the first Thor film, and like there was potential with the love story between her and Thor, and then honestly, the when we discussed Thor: Dark World, it it just didn't have nothing for her in that film. It's like, okay, so then that's where the problem where like why we're in Earth
Yeah,
again.
yeah,
It's just I, I mean, what do you think about Jane Foster in this film? Well,
yeah. I think um, she's she's not great. But I think like I agree with what you're saying. Like there was potential there, and then that potential was squandered in Thor: The Dark World, which makes this feel pointless in retrospect.
yeah,
But I don't think that's Natalie Portman's fault because like obviously she's an incredible actress.
yep,
Um, and I think like I'm looking forward to her coming back for Love and Thunder and like
yes,
the new direction that the character will go in with Taika Waititi. But
yes.
uh, no, in here like I don't buy their romance really. Um,
Oh, really?
yeah,
Okay.
like it feels forced.
Um,
Um, I
I
don't know. It just doesn't feel like I don't feel like they have a lot of chemistry.
I I wish like I'm with you about that. I I think they have chemistry in this film. For me, it's just I like it's just one of those. I think the problem is it's just like a puppy love kind of relationship you see in films, and like it's
Mm,
kind of like that here. And I feel like if Rana Kachima as a the director in this film, I feel like the relationship could be like a tragic love story. And we mentioned in Thor: The Dark World, Patty Jenkins was supposed to direct it, and she wanted like to be like a Romeo and Juliet kind of film.
hmm.
And I, again, you were saying for potential got squandered, and like, and you mentioned the beginning of the podcast about um the there's things about the film that didn't work, and the big one was the ending, how like Thor broke the Rainbow Bridge, and
Hmm.
then it gets like automatically fixed in the second film
Right.
with no explanation. And like I was like, wait, really? Because like in the first like because it started to be a little weird and like, okay, this is kind of bizarre. Like in the first Avengers, like how Thor gets back to Earth is like, Odin had to use some like dark magic or something like that.
Right. There's a line to like kind of like hand wave how Thor can show up if they broke the Bifrost.
Yeah, and this is like showing another problem I have with the MCU is like some reason with the Thor character, like they're so inconsistent on the payoff or like the setup. And
Yeah, they're quick to remove whatever like consequences there were for the last Thor movie.
yeah, and it's still doing that with in Phase 3. They did that when they enter in Infinity War.
Yeah,
Like
but
they,
it's the ending of Ragnarok is immediately like negated
um
because uh, everyone, all the Asgardians get killed.
yeah, I I mean, and then apparently there's some that survive. I
Right.
don't.
Well, yeah. I guess he killed half of them
Yeah,
because that's
I,
his thing. But
yeah. But I mean, I don't know. That was weird. I mean, and then the eye. That's another like that's the major one.
yeah,
I I was like, why are we giving him an eye again? Like I like
just
that
let
eye
him have
patch.
an eye patch. Yeah,
Yeah, I he looks cool. An eye
yeah.
patch.
He looks like his dad too. Like,
Yeah,
uh,
I don't understand that. Like, and that's been the problem with his character. Like, just not like follow through some of the payoffs and the setup they did with these films, and
mhm.
like they and it's not only Thor. They did this with a couple of characters or franchises.
Yeah,
And, and I just don't get that. And so like with that, it hurts Jane Foster in the long term because like was it like in the first Avengers film, like Coulson mentioned that she was where somewhere studying this other like phenomena, whatever, with Shield,
Yeah.
And I don't know why she didn't search for Thor for those 2 years. Like I don't know. Like I feel like there was potential with the relationship. It's just it gets squandered quickly with the MCU, and I feel like they didn't serve her character justice
Hmm.
afterwards. And so I am excited for her coming back, and I was kind of surprised. But then, of course, I mean, Taika Waititi totally reboot the franchise, and like now, like everyone wants to join that franchise now, because of
Right.
him. And so I'm curious what he's going to do with Jane Foster, and finally do the Mighty Thor storyline.
Hmm.
So um, I guess we can gonna get into the supporting characters. What do you think about Eric Savick and Dorsey in this film? They here as well, and I would say I like Eric in
Yeah.
this series.
I really like Eric. I don't like what they did to him in Thor: The Dark World, which I think we talked about.
Yes, we did.
Uh,
I
yeah,
didn't like either.
yeah, but I really like him in this movie and in the Avengers.
Mm, yeah.
Um, Darcy, I could take her or leave her in this, and then I didn't like her in Thor: The Dark World. Then I liked her in WandaVision. So it's, you know,
Yeah. It's just okay. She's there.
yeah,
um, yeah. Industry. Like it's kind of. I'm happy she came back in a
yeah,
good
me
way.
too.
Um, yeah. Again, it's the humor. You can
Hmm.
take it and leave it. Yeah. Um, yeah. I didn't mind her in this film. I like the recurring gag from both films. Her misspelling where
Mjolnir,
yeah, and to Mim Mim, or that's how she says it.
Mew Mew, yeah,
Oh my god, that was funny. At least that was funny. I love that recurring gag. Um, I guess to like wrap things up for this film, I would say when this film was in development and when we saw like images and or like promotional pictures, I was surprised how accurate and like comic book out of the page this film was. Like Thor's costume was
hmm
Thor costume, and Loki's costume was Loki. I mean, especially his helmet. I was like,
hmm
oh my god! And this was the first time when I was like, oh my god, this is something special. And I think the Marvel Studios, this is what makes the Marvel Studios special
hmm
in my mind. Where like the X-Men films, they just failed to just bring the combo costumes, and this
yeah,
is one of the reasons I love X-Men First Class, because of
mhm.
that. And
Yeah, they aren't embarrassed of the source material.
yeah, and I like the way Oscar looks in this film.
Yes.
Um, I don't know, and you have opinion that did you prefer the more like lived in and like Game of Thrones kind of style for Thor: The Dark World, and then entering into the third film, or do you like the first film's like interpretation of Asgard?
I think I like the more lived in version, but I think
Okay,
we only got there because of this film. Like I think this
yeah,
set the like visual
that's
like tone, like yeah, the aesthetic. Uh and I really liked it. So
yeah, yeah, and I guess another thing we can bring up and discuss is the Coulson in this film. This was another one that was kind of cool, connecting Shield, and I kind of like the president in this film. Um, what do you think about that, Will? Like, uh,
yeah. I mean, I'm always a fan of Coulson.
oh, of
Uh,
course.
um, yeah, no, I think
um,
um,
I, I mean,
I thought Greg is able to deliver the like Marvel dialogue really well in a way that doesn't feel like forced for me.
mm,
Um,
yes,
so
I agree. I love him in Iron Man too. I think
yeah,
I love his super nanny joke and
yeah,
bro. Uh, and he's great in the Avengers. He's amazing there. Um,
mhm,
and I I like how they were not as intrusive in Iron Man 2. I like how this film and then Captain America First Avenger handled the shared universe and how they build up to that.
Mhm.
Um, and I think this and Captain America really helped the first Avengers film very well, and I feel like they did a good job compared to like Iron Man 2. But
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, it felt more like it didn't feel as forced. Like
yes,
here, it would make sense that there was some shady government organization like looking at some hammer that fell from space.
yes,
Like it felt like a normal part of the plot. Whereas Iron Man 2, like it kind of worked, but also like it felt kind of forced.
I mean, yeah. I get like Fury watching over Tony,
Yeah, right.
um, but it's just like my problem with that. I think I mentioned it in Iron Man 2 podcast, but like or not, I can mention here is just the characterization of Nick Fury, and then like and the way they handle like the stakes is weird. Like like there's one scene there like it's comedy, and then they're trying to be serious. It's like it's tonal shift. It's just
Hmm.
ridiculous in Iron Man 2.
Yeah.
And like it's like why I should take series of Shield. Like he got out of the house under Coulson, and like there was no repercussion about that.
Hmm.
Like I don't know, it's just weird. The movie's weird. Iron Man 2. Anyway, um, and then I guess um, last thing to mention is the other supporting characters, like the Asgard characters, like Sif, Odin, and the Warriors Tree. I mean, what do you think about those characters? Well,
Yeah.
um,
I like Sif.
yes, I do.
Uh,
Me too.
the rest of them are they're okay.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay. I like the Warriors Tree and Sif,
Mhm.
and I feel like there was a those guys were another one that I feel like they had potential to continue on.
Yeah, I
And
think it, they could have done so much more with them, and then Taika Waititi just killed them all.
yeah, well,
Well, except for Sif.
yeah, well,
So
Sif, and I'm happy about that part.
yeah.
Um, I don't want to blame Tech Waititi. I think
Well,
that
okay.
was, for me, I blame Thor: The Dark World for not really using these characters properly.
Yeah.
So, and when we got to the third one, it's like, why we need them? Like, we're gonna have Valkyrie and like Hulk, and like it's just there was no way you can handle those like so many characters. Like it's just a shame.
Hmm.
But I'm happy Sif survived. I'm happy she's coming back in Love and Thunder. Hopefully she gets more a bigger role than these first two films. I mean,
Hmm.
it's just it's like what's the phrase? The only good I guess going up is the best phrase for Seth.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know. It's weird, and I like Odin. I really like Anthony Hopkins' performance in these
Yeah.
films, and I just wish we had more time with his character. He's like the most underdeveloped character in these films, and like I don't understand his character at all. You know,
Hmm.
like especially like when you're trying to throw like ambiguity of this character, I need to understand why, and they don't provide me that kind of information, and like it's frustrating. And, like especially like in Thor: The Dark World and Ragnarok with Hela, I'm like, okay, who is this character? I mean, like like in this film is it's Odin's fault for creating the rivalry between Thor and Loki, and like there's no repercussion of that. Like really, like there's just things about Owen that I feel like they're interesting, but they don't explore and not talk about in these films, and this is really weird. Like why? I don't understand. And that's he's another character that's like had potential moving forward, but like it got stronger
Hmm.
with the sequels. What's your opinion on Owen and his role in this film? Um,
Yeah. No, I really liked his role as like a father for
mm,
um, Odin and Loki. Like I liked exploring their relationships.
Mhm.
Um, and I think it was like touched on in the later movies, but
Right.
they were never as it never felt as like strong as it did in this movie, and especially him as like a failed father. Like he did not do a good job, like uh, curbing Thor's ego or like reassuring Loki that he was like a valued member of the family. Like he's not a good father,
No, he's not.
which makes him like a really interesting character. But
Yeah, but you know, they don't pay attention to that. It's
right,
like, and that's like it's such a weird way.
mm-hmm.
But I mean, there's other priorities and like storylines they're like focusing on, and I always feel like this one, like this part of the films, never like really want to focus on that. And it's like I don't know why you have that, and like why you want to try and make Owen as a bad father if you're not going to give us information and why he done that,
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's weird. But again, another great casting from Marvel Studios, and that's the best part about them is that they cast really good actors in these roles, and he was definitely the perfect pick for Owen, and like he
Mm-hmm.
was straight out of the comics.
Yeah.
So, um, anything else you want to say, Will? With tune out from this podcast, um,
Um,
or sign off. Thank you. Sign off. That was the word. I don't know why I forgot that.
that's all right. Happens.
Yeah. So, and anything
Um,
else you want to talk about?
yeah. I guess I wish they had done more with like the fantasy element of this movie. That was like
Mm,
the part that I enjoyed the most. Was like the first 20 minutes before he went to Earth.
yeah.
And I wish we'd get more of that, like in a Thor movie. Like the first two, he spends so much time on Earth, and then the third one, he's doing like cosmic stuff. I want that, like, I want to stay in the nine realms, and I want to do like fantasy
Things.
things.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. I I feel like it. Yeah. I do want to. I that was something I was excited about this character. But then one of the drawbacks about this character that doesn't make into my favorite character in the MCU is that the MCU is too much grounded, and like I don't think they're gonna go as far with the fantasy stuff, and so it's just gonna do like mix of fantasy with science fiction. I feel like
Hmm.
Crow or like Dark Crystal, and I cannot see the MCU version of Thor to go that well,
Yeah.
unfortunately, and
Yeah.
and I I understand what you're saying that well, and I'm the same boat as well. But like after seeing Dark World, and like especially because in the Dark World there were moments that was weird that they were talking about, like Odin had a line that was so weird, and I was like, really? Like he mentioned that we're not gods, and like, okay, so that means you're aliens, then,
Yeah.
and
But like, you can still have them be aliens and do like magic stuff.
yeah,
Like, I
I
want more of that. Or I want more scenes like Thor going to Jotunheim to pick a fight. Like I want more
yeah,
scenes that
I
feel like they're out of a fantasy movie instead of just like a sci-fi movie. But
yeah, I I mean, I want that as well, but I don't think they're interested in doing that.
no,
And also like I don't understand the nine realms as well. Like I mean, like I know what the nine realms are, but it's like they're in the comics. I understand that, but in the films, they don't show me what's
yeah,
the nine realms.
it seems like they're in the movies. They're planets that are somehow connected by war like wormholes. Like in the second movie, there was the convergence where
Yeah,
there were like wormholes opening up. Um,
I mean,
yeah, there's some weird science thing going on where like those nine planets are all interconnected.
I mean, and I mean they could have done like more explosion of the nine realms in the Thor: The Dark World.
Yeah,
That was the
no,
big,
they should have. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and I remember during the development of the second Thor film, they were talking about that,
Hmm.
and 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 that was like the most disappointing thing is that they didn't explore that enough, and so
Right.
and again, that's another one that they squander, and I I don't know, it's I don't know, I I think I believe they can do fantasy. It's just for me the MCU doesn't I don't know one of the reasons I like the DC AU the DC Animation Universe with Bruce Timm and Paul Dini.
Yeah.
It's like they own the universe. Like there is fantasy and cosmic stuff, but
Hmm.
with the MCU, I can understand they're trying to keep this simple and like understandable for the audience that they don't know about the conflict universe of
Yeah.
Thor and
No,
these other.
I think they're slowly getting more comfortable with getting weird.
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
I think like WandaVision especially. Um, but I think the next Doctor Strange movie too is gonna open up a lot more like possibilities for how like fantastical stuff can get. So I'm
And
looking forward to
yeah,
expanding that.
and Spider-Man 3. No, let's not forget. No Way Home is doing that as well. Um, another
Yep.
crazy idea of multiple versions of I, that I'm curious about because we don't know if we're gonna see other multiple Spider-Mans and
Right. But
and
we do know that we're seeing the Doc Ock from the
Spider-Man
Raimi
2.
movies. So
Yeah, um,
yeah.
yeah, and so again, we're going such a weird way with that as well.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I don't know, I feel like these films could be like the Wonder Woman series. I mean, like that series totally embraced the Greek fantasy elements, and it's interesting how Thor doesn't do that in these films. But it's
Yeah.
just, and also like Wonder Woman series, um, like um, go more into that because like they feel more standalone from the other DC EU films,
Hmm.
and they're not worrying about the shared universe like Thor is and the MCU. But one thing I will say, I don't know if you think about the comparison. This film this film and the other superhero film is similar. Is Green Lantern. It, I feel like this film did a good job of balancing at least the superhero and character discovering himself storyline over Green Lantern, where that film struggled to be a cosmic film as well, but it really just struggle in all parts of like giving you a likable character, um, knowing what you want to be as a film. Was it a space cop film, or was it like a character journey film of him, discovering the wonders of space, and that film. This film showed that you can actually do that. It's just you need to commit to that, and I feel like Green Lantern never did that, and it's interesting how it failed to meet all those moving parts where the first Thor film delivered on that. You know, uh, you know, of course, I don't like their things, but like it's so much more tolerable and and we're sticking in one place instead of just moving back and forth
Yeah.
like Green Lantern is, and that's one thing I like about the first Thor film. What do you think about that? Blow your mind that Green Lantern was also that same kind of film, and they just crash and burn. And
Yeah. I never saw the Green Lantern film, but
okay,
because I heard about its quality,
uh,
but
you're lucky. I saw it in
yeah.
theaters, and
Oof.
oh my
I'm
god,
sorry.
yeah. I mean, uh, let me say this out loud. It's not Batman Robin. It's okay. It's just
Okay.
average middle road superhero film, and it was similar to Thor. It this, if you know Green Lantern, he's a cosmic character, and the film struggled to really handle that. And like we were just going back and forth to Olin and space, and then we are at Earth, and it's just it was a mess. And I felt sorry for Ryan Reynolds. I thought he was a okay cast. Like he was a good casting for Ryan as Hal Jordan. I'm sorry, but yeah. So, anything else you want to say, Will? What first Thor film?
Yeah, no, I think that's it for me.
Oh, that's cool. So, thank you, Will, for coming today and discuss Thor for his 10th anniversary. Um, his film was released on Wednesday, May 6th. May 6th, the release date. So this is good that we discussed this week. So for the next podcast, Will, do you want to do a top 10 ranking film podcast? If like either for MCU or in general Marvel films?
Sure.
Do you want to do best or worst? I'm curious.
Cool. Let's do best.
Okay, so we'll do a top 10 best Marvel films. That means we're going to include the MCU, the Spider-Man films, and the X-Men films, right?
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
and we also will include like the Spider-Verse, because I want to include that. Okay, so we'll do that as the next podcast for Sunday. So thank you everyone for listening to this podcast. Me and Will come back as you hear the discussion on discussing our top 10 best Marvel films. So anyway, folks, hit that subscribe button and have a nice weekend. Bye.